Welcome all to the kickoff event of ESACH Talks 2022. My name is Samidha, and as part of ESACH's coordination committee, I will be moderating this event tonight. First of all, I just want to thank you all on behalf of the entire team for joining with us. Just a quick reminder, we will be recording this webinar to post it online. So if you don't wish to be viewed on any online platforms, then please go ahead and turn off your cameras. Also, I request you to please mute your microphones during the presentations. Now moving on to our talks, we are delighted to have 5 emerging professionals with us as our panelists today. Each of them will be sharing their work with us and talk about the cultural heritage and its contribution towards the ongoing European Year of Youth. After their presentations, we will hold a short discussion followed by a question-answer round. So feel free to use the chat to write questions as you have them, but please remember to include the name of the speaker that you're going to address. Also, keep an eye on the chat throughout the event because we could use it to share links or information or anything that speakers are discussing at that time. So without further delay, I would like to introduce our first panelist, Carlota. Apart from her work at UNESCO, she has been involved with ESACH since 2019 and is currently serving as our president. So, Carlota, you have the floor.
Hello, everyone. It's so great to see you. I'm really glad that you could join us today. I'm going to talk. Let me see if you can see my presentation in a second. Is it okay? I'm just going to talk to you about our experience with ESACH as a grassroots organization and some of the lessons that I think we can learn from this. First, let me give you some context. ESACH, which stands for the European Student Association for Cultural Heritage, was founded on the occasion of the European Year of Cultural Heritage in 2018. And the way that we work is mostly based on collaboration. We connect people and organizations with similar interests and goals and develop projects together. In practical terms, ESACH is run by a volunteer team, many of whom are here today. This team is composed from young people from all around Europe and even beyond, and we work mostly remotely. We are volunteers and we work together on particular projects and programs during several months. Usually we require a minimum commitment of about 1 year. So what happens is that because we have this flexible and so project-based structure, the number of people in the team varies a lot from time to time. At the moment, we are about 19 people divided into different subgroups for particular projects. And the good thing is that this flexible structure has really enabled us to adapt to different times, to COVID, to in person, and to different situations. And also, although this has been difficult in the past couple of years, we would like to meet in person every now and then, ideally once a year, so that we can, meet, have fun, and feel a bit more like a team. At the same time, we've also counted with the support of many institutions like EuropaNostra, EuropaNostra, and different ICOMOS national chapters, as well as universities all around Europe. Without these institutions, it would have been impossible for us to exist, and because they really have helped us to set up the infrastructure that we need to exist, and they supported that economically also for programs and especially for the meetings in person. And what are the results? Well, thanks to this collaboration between the different volunteers and the institutions, we have grown to be a network of more than 500 members, and we have a substantial program of activities. This includes the internship program, the ambassadors with EuropaNostra, the e-magazine, ESACH Quarterly, the webinar series ESACH Talks, where we are together, as well as the ESACH blog. We think that the ESACH blogs have provided a platform for young people to meet online and exchange across disciplines. And in the last year, 800 people have attended one of the ESACH talks, and 40 young people have been invited as speakers. We have also highlighted young voices through 2 books and an e-magazine with contributions from more than 80 authors. And we have also built the capacities of more than 65 young people who have been involved in this network since 2018, so only in 3 years, and providing opportunities to develop projects and actually see the impact. So in doing this, we think that we have connected and empowered hundreds of young people all around Europe, and we've raised awareness about cultural heritage, we've also gotten really good experience in project management, and we've been able to work on the projects and see the results to get to work in an interdisciplinary and multicultural team. And also, in a more aspirational way, we have contributed to create a sort of more cohesive and interlinked Europe, because we are working together in teams across different countries and doing and exchanging on the ways that we understand our heritage. And all of this has been done by a youth network, which is not legally registered. We have a budget of like 300 euros a year and an average age of like 25. So what can we take from this? From my point of view, we have a few lessons. The first one, which I think is like the most clear, is that there are literally hundreds of young people all around Europe who are skilled, committed, and passionate about cultural heritage. And this is a massive force that we really should make the most of this. And the second is that I think young people need the chances to experiment and fail. If ESACH has worked, it's because we have been able to try new things and to commit a lot of mistakes and to fail many times. But maybe, half of these things that we have started have worked. And that's the point, that we have to learn by doing and by failing also. And I think this is important because there's too many times that the funding programs for creativity or for youth do not take into consideration these. And so in doing this, they make creativity more difficult. And I think that's the next point, that if we work like this with young people in a flexible and creative manner, we will have innovative results. So to kind of conclude, I think that investing in youth initiatives is not only like a fair choice, but it's also a smart choice, because in reality, you will get bigger impacts, you will get them more flexibly and more efficiently. So I think from my point of view, we don't need so many programs for youth, but we need programs by youth. And I know this is something to think about. So I wanted to just leave you with a question, which is from here, what can we take from this experience? Do you think we can learn from this experience of ESACH and change the way that cultural institutions have typically approached youth engagement? Can we think of new models where instead of teaching young people about cultural heritage, we actually let them develop these projects themselves? Do you think we can empower young people to develop cultural heritage projects in a more creative, in a more innovative and more free way? Do you think that institutions will be able to take the risk? I look forward to hearing your thoughts, and thank you so much for this. I look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carlota. Actually, from my personal experience, I can say working with ESACH in any way possible has been an enriching experience. And all of us here, I think I would like to tell audience as well, getting a membership to ESACH is pretty much like on an easier path. So please, I actually sector. Now we will move on to the next panelist, Manon Richard. She has an extensive experience of working at several European organizations. She joined Brussels office of EuropaNostra as EU projects officer and has been developing EuropaNostra's youth activities as well. So Manon, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Samida, and greetings to all of you from Brussels. Well, first of all, I would like to thank colleagues and friends from ESACH for the invitation to speak to an ESACH talk for the second time already. And congratulations on relaunching the ESACH talk that was awaited. And EuropaNostra is really a proud partner of this initiative since the beginning. We're also really grateful for our cooperation over the past few years. We've achieved a lot together for youth, and this year represents yet another opportunity to scale up our work, but I will get back to that shortly. So I was asked first to introduce myself and my part in the heritage sector. So actually I have an academic background in European political science and international relations. So probably unlike most of you, I'm not a heritage expert. I studied in Strasbourg in France. That's a very historical city at the crossroads of several cultures. It's also the seat of important European institutions like the European Parliament, although it's a little bit debated at the moment, and also the Council of Europe. The Council of Europe is actually the very first organization that started the process of European integration in 1949, based on values of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, already before the EU institutions were born. And actually also in terms of cultural and heritage cooperation at European level, the Council of Europe was a pioneer with the European Cultural Convention that was issued in 1954. Well, anyway, at the end of my studies, I did an internship at the Council of Europe for the Parliamentary Assembly on issues related to culture, heritage, and diversity. So that's when I first got acquainted with heritage, and I came across EuropaNostra. So I decided to apply as well for an internship, initially for 6 months, which transformed into 5 years spent in the Netherlands, where we have our headquarters. There I worked on plenty of networking, communication activities, and organization of events. And almost 2 years ago, I came to work for our Brussels office to focus more on institutional relations, policy, advocacy, and of course, the youth activities. So now, today, there are 3 key words I would like to convey when it comes to youth, which you can see on the slides. It's to engage, to connect, and to empower. Why? Because young people have and feel a special duty and responsibility to take action, to ensure that our future is sustainable, beautiful, and inclusive. And this is exactly the vision that we have of and for youth at EuropaNostra. Young people really have a central role to play, not only to ensure the sustainability in the cultural and heritage sector, but in the entire debate on the future of our society, the future of Europe. So that's why we are really striving to integrate a youth dimension across all of our activities and offer specific opportunities for young people to speak up, to network, and to build their capacity. For example, I'm sure you're all aware of the successful European Heritage Youth Ambassadors Program run with ESACH and the European Heritage Tribune. I see some ambassadors here tonight, so greetings to all of them. So through this program, young people can actually share their perspectives online. And it's a program we really co-developed together with them. We're here to provide a frame for cooperation and for networking, but we're very eager to listen to their creative ideas and suggestions. So maybe later on, some ambassadors can also share their experience. So now I guess all of you know that this year is the European Year of Youth. And after all these months of pandemic crisis, it's really a good opportunity to celebrate and to take part in plenty of events across Europe and make your voice heard. So I would really like to encourage all of you to take part in these events, to check the online platform that gathers really everything that's going on across Europe. And if you organize your own activities or initiatives related to youth, place them in this wider framework. It will have much more visibility. You can use the logo, you can post the events on the website. It's really a year for us, and we should really make the most out of it. And my last point is that we are stronger together. As you can see, we are several today speaking from different organizations, but we really share a common goal. And we should seize the momentum of this European year to build even more and stronger bridges between our activities to create an even larger movement of youth cultural heritage. This way, we can also have a wider impact and visibility for our work, and ultimately ensure that your voice is empowered and heard. But beyond that, that it's integrated into discussions on the future of Europe in a meaningful way. So thank you very much, and looking forward to further exchanging with you.
Thank you so much, Menon. Actually, EuropaNostra's work has been very exciting, and if you want to know more about EuropaNostra's work or her work, then you are free to look at our social media handles and other platforms where we have provided with the links that would be useful to you guys. So now we will move on to our next panelist, Wouter. He is from Leiden University and is currently working with the Future is Heritage organization. It's an international network of young professionals, students, and enthusiasts. So yeah, Wouter, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Sumira, and good evening to you all. I don't have a presentation prepared for today, so I'm just going to speak to you, if that's fine with you. I see a lot of familiar faces, but for those who do not know me, I'm Wouter Hinnigs. I'm an archaeologist from the Netherlands. I'm currently working at Erfgoed Gelderland, which is a regional heritage organization in the eastern part of the Netherlands. And I am an employee on heritage and youth as a theme, so which is very exciting also to join us, this group today. And I also work for the Future's Heritage, which is an international network of young professionals, students, enthusiasts, volunteers that aim on exchanging knowledge and exchanging experiences internationally. I have a very personal connection with the Future's Heritage myself because I started out as a volunteer when I was an intern at the organization I'm currently working at. I think I was 17 when I started out, so I was really young, and I fit the category of youth very good at that time, still hopefully. But I started as a volunteer during the Future's Heritage Summit, which was our first event, because we actually started out as like a one-time event. We were supported by Erfgoed Gelderland, Erfgoed Brabant, also EuropaNostra. And we started actually from a very activist basis. We had a parallel summit in Berlin during the European Year of Cultural Heritage. And the main goals for us was to provide a platform for young people on an international stage to exchange ideas, experiences, have a network of young professionals that are working in cultural heritage, but want to expand their reach and their outreach to other countries as well. And one of our main aims was that a lot of people, especially young people in the European heritage sector, are not paid for their work, and that was something that we really wanted to put on an international agenda. And we were actually quite surprised by the reaction of that event. It was an event made by young people for young people, so our program was completely made by young people and consisted of their projects, their ideas, their views on the European heritage sector. And after this success, we knew this is not a one-time thing. We have to continue this work. So with a lot of partners across Europe, EuropaNostra as well, but also from Romania, from France, international partners such as ESACH and Europeana as well. We've hosted several events over the past couple of years, events where we invite young people from all over Europe to join us. But what we want to do, and what we want to do in the future as well, is not to solely invite young people, but also to invite the established professionals as well, those who are working in the heritage sector already and have a concrete position. And what we really want to support and stimulate is intergenerational working, because we believe this is one of the key elements to strive for a more inclusive, diverse, and collaborative European heritage sector. So that is also something that we really want to work towards this year during the European Year of Youth, especially. And yeah, we do that via our events. We want to expand this as well. We are very much, I think Carlota said it before, very much exploring the possibilities that we have. Sometimes we fail, sometimes we try new things. And we are very grateful that we have 2 organizations that provide us with financial support to make these mistakes and try these things out. And with the event, we learn more, and we can see that we can bring a massive group together across Europe and stimulate this exchange. And I'm very much looking forward this year to collaborate even more and found sustainable relationships with other initiatives, such as all the initiatives that are speaking today. Yes, I think that is like a general line out. What we have planned for this year, we are hosting once again an event, hopefully in person, and I hope that COVID will keep down this year. And in this event, we really want to collaborate with organizations such as EuropaNostra, ESACH, Europeana, to combine our forces, combine our visions, and really make a wonderful year where we put youth participation and youth integration as a top priority on the European agenda. So we are really looking forward, and I invite you all to join us as well. And I think we can make a great year of youth together. So thank you for having us today.
Thank you so much, Wouter. I think everyone here is pretty much inspired to get involved with the activities of Future is Heritage, and looking forward to what the organization is coming up with. Moving on, our next panelist is Killian Downing. He is an archivist at Dublin City University Library, and he's been chair of the New Professional Task Force, which works to support young and new professionals in the Europeana network. So I give the floor to him now.
Hi everyone, so my name is Killian Downing. I'm an archivist with Dublin City University Library, and I'm also a voluntary Europeana Members Councillor. And I'm going to do a short and sweet presentation, really resonating with Manon and Wouter and Carlotta, all about the need for this kind of intergenerational learning and empathy and collaboration. So first thing to start off, I'm just going to have a personal story about how I got into Europeana itself and kind of the sector of digital cultural heritage. In 2013, I shared a story about a World War I memorial plaque that had been in my family's possession for decades after my grandfather dug it up in Limerick back in the 1950s. And we didn't know who this person was, and we decided to put it up on the Europeana collections, the 1914 to 1918 campaign. The memorial plaque was associated with this ship, the Laurentic, which was, hit 2 mines during the First World War and went down off the coast of Ireland in Lough Swilly. Here it is, decades later. So we were able to establish for the fact that the family, the grandchildren of Thomas McGarry, were in Australia, the UK, and some of whom were actually in Ireland as well, were able to discover the object and the story on Europeana, and we were able to find out who Thomas McGarry was, and basically share the kind of digital cultural heritage. And for the family of Thomas McGarry, this was such a critical kind of find to them, because they never met their grandfather, obviously, and they never had a body or a grave to go to. So this really was the kind of a tangible artifact that reminded them of him and his involvement in the war and his life. And this was kind of some of the coverage, kind of thinking about how digital cultural heritage and the actual artifacts themselves have this power to kind of connect people. And I think this is really the way in which, archives and libraries and galleries all come together to kind of provide meaning and to provide a platform for ourselves. So I'm just going to talk very quickly about the Europeana initiative. It's the European Commission Platform for Digital Cultural Heritage. It's a kind of a meta aggregator which provides access to all forms of digital cultural heritage, images, text, 3D, sound, and video. It's available in 35 and counting languages. It does depend on the way in which that you kind of interact with the APIs and Europeana itself. But it's definitely a solid 26 languages, which is currently kind of representing the Commission's intent to have it in that languages of the members of the European Union. The key point of Europeana is its persistent access to digital cultural heritage in a way that it's standardized and authentic and clear, and so that there's no point sharing copyrighted digital cultural heritage where possible. And if we can reuse it and reinterpret it and kind of give it new meaning and new understanding, that's really what Europeana is seeking to do. And so as part of that, it's critical then to have rights statements, kind of understanding of how the item might link back to its host institution or organization. Definitely, Europeana is seeking to empower digital change and be at the forefront of this idea of digital transformation, which means a lot of things to a lot of people. But really, it is fundamentally about connecting people with technology, with kind of resources, and with kind of an organizational aspect, which is through the network and through the foundation and through the aggregators, which are all the 3,500 organizations who work and collaborate with Europeana. The new Professionals Task Force was a group of people who got together in 2020 to work around a challenge that we perceived in the digital cultural heritage sector and in Europeana itself, and really to better understand the challenges facing new professionals around job precarity, around job casualization, and around many issues, including systemic racism, to a lot of issues, but also looking at the opportunities around them. And so how did we do this? Well, we looked at the perspective of others, specifically new professionals. And we were working closely with Carlotta and Marius and other members of the Europeana Students Association, the ESACH, the European Students Association for Cultural Heritage, and also looking at events, collaboration, and getting more professionals who were kind of new, coming from universities and other organizations to be involved in Europeana. Some of the organizations included No Time to Wait, the International Council for Archives, We Are Museums. And as part of our work, we listened, learned, and we collaborated. And our approach was based on a kind of a change pathway where we were thinking about, well, what is the fundamental impact that will be achieved by having a better representation of new professionals in Europeana, which is quite, what's the word, maybe homogenous around kind of career professionals, maybe who have the autonomy and let's say autonomy to kind of the autonomy to kind of know what they need or know what they want in the digital cultural heritage sector. So the recommendations of the new Professionals Task Force report were to cultivate intergenerational exchange, which Wouter was talking about there, and really about supporting inclusivity for new professionals. And a lot of our work based on these recommendations has been creating voice and creating space for new professionals. And this has been continuing for the last kind of month or two. And I know Georgia Evans is on this call, and we've had a number of editorials looking at how Europeana is giving a voice to ESACH, to the International Council for Archives, and for any organizations or associations representing new professionals. Our work is only starting, and really Europeana wants to be as inclusive as possible. And so if you would like to get in touch with us and have any suggestions for ways in which we can work with you, and when I say we, I'm talking about the Europeana Network Association and the foundation itself. And really, we would love to hear, and I'll be available for any questions about how you would like to get involved. So I'll stop at that. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Killian. The work that you just discussed with us is very interesting, especially for all the cultural heritage and other enthusiasts and heritage experts as well. Now we will move on to our next and the last panelist for tonight. His name is William Jacksney. He has a background in art history, and he has been working for the Emerging Professionals Group at ECOMOS for last 2 years. Apart from his work at REBA, he is also working towards formalizing an ECOMOS UK Mural Paintings Committee as well. So, Jack, the floor is all yours.
But just a background about me, I have studied history of art at university, and then moving on from that, I worked in conservation, conserving paintings. And I did that full time for a couple of years, and I now do that freelance in addition to my work with the Royal Institute of British Architects, where my work is really about working with architects who have a specific interest in conserving historic buildings, and about helping them get access to training and to essentially accredit so they can do that specific type of work. So I've also been working with the ECOMOS Emerging Professional Group for the last couple of years, and I've been looking to set up a new ECOMOS UK mural painting committee. So hopefully that works out down the line. This type of talk on a European kind of scale is actually relatively quite new to me. I usually operate on a more national level, so hopefully this might provide a slightly alternate insight, which is why I'm particularly happy to be here. And in an unusual way, I never actually realised quite the kind of interest meetings like these actually attracted. So it's really a positive thing to see so many faces. The previous speakers touched on a number of ideas, particularly those of intergenerational heritage, which I also kind of wanted to touch on. Groups such as ESACH are really important for providing young people with these types of opportunities to collaborate. And these are also the kind of opportunities which ECOMOS and ECOMOS UK also wish to kind of promote, especially in these kind of difficult times. But what we've noticed, and what I've also noticed working with the RIBA, is a fundamental issue for young people who are working in heritage. In particular, the kind of boundaries sometimes that they can face within heritage, particularly those which require significant educational investment, and the kind of double-edged sword of requiring qualifications and acquiring qualifications. So I think meetings like these are really useful for their multidisciplinary element, as it allows young professionals to connect with people that they might not normally. In addition to the kind of compartmentalizing that heritage can sometimes be a bit vulnerable to, and especially those with particularly high educational requirements, I think some of the issues that young people face, which is something that is really important to tackle, is about legitimate access to job roles, and especially access to volunteering work, which can sometimes be made really difficult, especially if young professionals have particularly high financial burdens, if they've been studying a lot, or they just inherently work in a sector which isn't particularly well paid. And this kind of cost of training and lack of opportunity for some individuals has had real impact, I think, on a lot of diversity in the sector. And that's something that at REBA and at the Emerging Professionals Group, we're really keen to kind of promote and kind of spearhead. Young people now have kind of more access to knowledge than ever before, and heritage is moving in a particularly quick direction towards things like sustainability and climate change, and indeed diversity. And it does rely heavily on young people to carry it in that particular direction. And so the work I do with REBA and with ICOMOS is particularly keen on promoting that and ensuring that there are training opportunities, and the key word for this, I think, seems to be intergenerational opportunities for people to engage with those types of topic. And I think especially getting people from less privileged backgrounds involved is something which is really important, at least to us at REBA, where especially where the work is more based around architecture, there is an inherent high financial burden and stress on people, young people, to get access to that work. And we really want to kind of remove the concept of some areas of heritage being only for older, very, very people who have been in academics for a very long time. And we want to really push forward the idea that young people can engage with it, and it's not a kind of there isn't a barrier there. So with ICOMOS and with REBA, we've been pushing to create opportunities. With REBA, we've been working with a group called the Council on Training in Architectural Conservation, and with various local societies. But I think that there are some difficulties in crossing boundaries and accessing wider areas of heritage. But with ICOMOS, we've had a bit more success, and one particular event that we want to highlight is on the 18th of April, which is the International Day for Monuments and Sites. And they'll be exploring the theme of heritage and climate through open, constructive, intergenerational dialogues. And again, getting young people at these events is really key, because ultimately moving forward, these types of topics are going to rely on young people's input. So yeah, we just want to push the idea that we want young people to probe. I think talking to a crowd like this, you're already somewhat preaching to the choir, because you are obviously all engaged. But yeah, those are the areas which we're particularly. I think there's a lot of benefits and a lot of great things going on, but I think there are also still areas where we do have a lot of work to do.
Thank you so much, Jack. I think now we can move forward to just the panel discussion in general. We will try to keep it short so that we can have some questions from the audience as well. So the first thing that we all would want to know is your personal ideas that you would think would help empower youth and contribute towards cultural heritage sector. So if you could go on one by one or just start randomly. Yeah.
So what I think is very important, as I have experienced that myself, because I studied archaeology and I was not really aware of like a European cultural heritage field or like looking beyond my own borders. What I think is very important that within organizations with already established professionals, it's very important that there is a sense of openness and providing those opportunities to young people. I've experienced myself that I benefited a lot of trying things out under the responsibility of somebody that was already established, but also provided me the tools to expand my own knowledge, try to exchange with other people as well. I think it's very important that organizations really should think about how, firstly, do you want to engage youth? Secondly, how do you want to do that? And I think it's very important that organizations in that keep some sort of an open mind, because you see that a lot of times people or organizations want to invite young people to their organizations, but in a certain framework. And I think sometimes you really have to loosen up that framework, just give them the opportunity to experiment. They can fail, of course, but sometimes the tight grip of the organizations keeps that it's not that impactful. And I think if you loosen those frameworks a little bit up, you can achieve so much more for both the established professionals and the young as well. But it's something that I would hope to see in the future more. So that will be my idea.
Yeah, I think the points you've raised there are probably pretty much hit the nail on the head. I think you have the potential, you could go either way of it really, of you can loosen up the organisation and say, okay, we need a bit more fluidity, we need to be less rigid with what it is that what our mission is, but at the same time you could go the other way with it, inclusivity and diversity, you could go the other way and say, well, actually we need to implement some actual kind of quotas about who it is that we're working with and how much we're actually doing that and recording that and actually publishing that and making that known knowledge. So I think there is an element, especially with the larger organisations, where perhaps they do occasional events or they like to promote that they are kind of reaching out in certain directions, but in reality you really need access to the information as to proof that they're doing that, and making it more obvious.
Yeah, I really agree with what both of you have said. I think that there is a difference between sort of consultation and then actual meaningful engagement. So I think this is an important thing to take into account and to actually give the young people the possibility to actually make choices, to see impacts. No, I think this is important, to empower that you can see it. Otherwise it can be a bit disappointing, I guess, sometimes. But also I think what William already said, actually the basic thing of having paid internships and jobs that are actually welcoming and available for everybody. I think that's a really strong and important baseline for the professional side, and then also with the other topics more about sort of civic engagement of other young people generally.
If I may, I think the three key elements really, and that have been mentioned a bit by all of us today, is first of all, the intergenerational dialogue is really important. I think it really creates mutually beneficial exchanges between emerging professionals and established professionals. We can both learn from each other, and that's really important for the future. Second is projects and programs for and by youth. Only if we allow young people to do things, they will learn, and they will also become more professional. They will build their capacities. And the third element is actually to integrate the youth dimension across all activities. Also at EuropaNostra, we tended to have, a specific project for young people, but now we really strive to have in each event really this intergenerational dialogue and have youth contributing not only as participants, but really as actors in the events and initiatives.
I also just wanted to comment on, I thought it was really interesting. I really agree with what you guys have said, but what William, I don't know if it's Will or William said about climate change being sort of a bit like our responsibility. I think this is something that I hadn't really thought about so much, and I think this is okay, it's not our responsibility, but it's our task for the future. And I think this is something that we all see as a common concern. And perhaps this is also something that can bring us together also with the rest of society. What do you think?
Hello. First of all, I study tourism management, but also cultural heritage online. And I'm thinking that every agent or stakeholder can take action in order to promote sustainability, whether it is in the social field, like inclusiveness, or for the environment, because places of cultural heritage and museums are places of informal learning. So I think museum pedagogues or the people who are responsible for the tourists and visitors of these places can take action in order to have a more sustainable future and green future.
Thank you. And also with the point, like all of you mentioned that it's an intergenerational dialogue, but the dialogue is two-way stream. So we know how things work in the heritage organizations to some extent, but do you have any guidance to give to the younger generation and what they can do to get involved towards such initiatives? Or is there a particular cultural path or like a how to say it, not just a cultural path, but like just awareness of what is going around, not in Europe but worldwide in the cultural heritage sector, so how they can get involved in such things? Because the organizations will do their work of publicizing their initiatives and their activities, but what can they?
Yeah, I think it is important to like the event that we are tonight. I think those already help a lot, and just going to activities, and it is it's a big step that you have to take, especially when you start out, because it can be very new, it can be very intimidating, I think, as well. But these bottom-up approaches that we've all worked on, I think is a very key element to engage to more young people, that because I think beside us there are a lot of other people who are maybe struggling with this as well across Europe. And what I think it is important to maybe make this also more inclusive is that this happens now predominantly, I think, on an academic level, but that we also look further than not just the people that are working on cultural heritage because of their studies or their work, but also people that are volunteers or just have an enthusiasm for certain heritage, intangible or tangible, because they are also the new generation of the European heritage sector, but also the global heritage sector. So I think it's very important to still look at the ways that we can engage with people and really collaborate with them as well. But it's difficult. And I think every person is different. So there are various ways that you could do this. But I think the most important thing is maybe to make this as informal as possible, because especially when you're young, but I would be speaking from my own perspective, of course. But I think informality is very important, and just keep it very, on a very equal basis. I think that's the best way to go.
I agree with what you said. Also, I think it's really wonderful that all of us kind of had these different experiences, and we each one do a slightly different thing, but we can still come together. And I've been to the Futures Heritage events, and you come to the talks, and we're still, so each one does a different thing, but we are all together, and it's good that each one has something different to offer. So in this, I would say, like, to any other person, like, don't think that it's already been done, that you don't have anything to contribute. Like, we can all offer a particular different thing, and I think this is important. Also, the fact is that heritage is a bit what we interpret of it. I think this is like the biggest thing that I've come with, I don't know, this experience from ESACH. So it really can take as many meanings as we want it to take. So if we want it to be inclusive or European, we can make it. So I would say, like, to not be scared to make your own interpretation, make your own, and add your own values.
Yeah, I actually totally agree with you. If we saw Killian's presentation, we saw that his association with heritage started with something very personal. So instead of looking at it as one particular part to go and have a career in heritage or be involved in any activities, maybe we can chisel and make our own path in a way and take make use of all the things that are available for us. With this, maybe I think, yeah, we still have time, so we can start the question and answer round. Lydia will look at some questions if we have some in the chat section. If not, then you are happy to raise your hands and just ask it. Now the floor is all to the audience. As said, anyone who has questions can either raise their hand and participate directly, or if you prefer, you can just write it in the chat, and then Lydia, who is also my colleague at ESACH, will read them out to you.
Hi, thank you. I think I've been given the spotlight. I'm Georgia. It's really great to be here and see some familiar faces. I work at Europeana Foundation very closely with Killian, so it was great to see his presentation as well. And something I just really quickly wanted to say and couldn't kind of contain myself to saying, kind of in response to the question of, you know, what can new professionals do? What can students do? Young people working in cultural heritage. I think also really key is to join the networks that are out there. So I'm thinking of, you know, I would just so encourage people to join ESACH, to join the Futurist Heritage, to join Europeana, because I often think what's a problem for people new to the sector is that maybe, not in all cases, but that sometimes opportunities really are there. Events, training, you know, networking opportunities, but if you don't know that they're there, how will you ever be able to go to them? And I think networks can be a really powerful way of, you know, getting those opportunities to your inbox, seeing on social media, meeting people and hearing about them. So I just kind of wanted to also make that point and really encourage people to join all these fantastic networks and start to build something really really powerful and see those opportunities when they're out there as well. Yeah, thank you.
If nobody else volunteers, I'll go for it. Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Verona. I'm talking to you from Bucharest, and I've had the pleasure of working at various points in my career with more than half the panel at this point. So it has been quite nice to hear all these perspectives tonight. I would raise a question, and I have to say it's kind of a personal obsession. It's quite difficult in the sense that it covers a lot of things and you don't necessarily need to provide the full answer now. It's more like a food for thought. We're talking a lot about inclusion and representativity and this bridging the gap kind of trend, let's say. Mostly related to the youth, but also regarding other layers of society. And my question is, so if we take a look with a, let's say, cold eye, engaging with cultural heritage in many circumstances is kind of privileged in many respects. And I'm constantly asking myself, how can we make experiencing and engaging with cultural heritage be less privileged? Thank you.
Go on, I'll have a first stab at it then. I think it's a really good question and a really important one. I think it's something that everyone hears. It's one of I think that the aspects of heritage that I think people are generally aware of, but it's such an elephant in the room as it's so difficult to address. I think there's a few ways you can go about it. I think a few notions we touched on before, based around kind of quotas or loosening up organisational systems to make them more accessible to individuals that normally wouldn't make it through the door, is one way of going about it. I think fundamentally there may have to be higher level changes, whether that's to do with, you know, funding, opportunities. You know, inherently there's only a certain amount of work voluntarily run organisations can really do. So, you know, universities and grant schemes and funding opportunities, perhaps, which have a more focused target audience, which maybe specifically address issues such as, you know, diversity or low-income households might be one particular way of going about it. But again, it's just so difficult. it's where that money comes from is always going to be just one of the main problems heritage is going to always have. And so I guess fundamentally that's why the voluntary organisations and their size and their ability to make these kind of ideas known is, I guess, the starting block in how we can kind of push that requirement forward, because ultimately if we don't, then it's nothing's going to change. But yeah, I think that is definitely one I have to think about for a very long time. But if anyone gets the answer, do let me know.
If I may add something, I think it also depends on our interpretation of cultural heritage. It's very broad, and we should also raise awareness of what it is. Actually, people experience heritage every day. It's also the food that we eat. It's the traditional parties we go to. So people actually experience heritage every day, but they're not necessarily aware of it, and they're not aware of the whole history behind it. That it's not only local, not only regional or national. It's always much broader. It's European, international, and it really reflects our shared history. So in that sense, I think, of course, there are certain types of heritage that are more elitist, and for that, I don't have a concrete answer to your question, Miruna, how to make it more inclusive. I think it's, every little project that we organizations can do to bring people to these places really help. But it also has, to gather many more partners, also institutions and authorities to really tackle the issue. But I think already by raising awareness of what heritage is, we can make cultural heritage closer to people.
Yeah, excellent. I think that's such a relevant question, Maruna, and thanks, William and Manon, for kind of articulating it. Like privilege and is such a key aspect of this, and this is something that we kind of researched and discussed in the New Professionals Task Force report. And one of the key parts of that report was taking a step back and looking at our own privilege. Our own privilege positions being white, middle class, and living in Central and Western Europe. And I think a key thing was the very fact that we had the time to work on this task force report in terms of spare time. That is so indicative of the issue. And a big aspect of this is perhaps kind of the lack of equality data that's being captured across associations, including Europeana. And Europeana is improving this in terms of gathering this information in a kind of a trusted and safe way, that it's anonymized or pseudo-anonymized where needed. But I think this is one of the steps that can be taken in a whole framework of training, where we're, I suppose, become more aware of our own implicit bias and training and skills around why we need to kind of challenge systemic racism, even in its very kind of subtle forms. And this is something that I would be fully aware that Europeana is kind of working towards with a task force, just like the New Professionals one, and this kind of way in which I think, Manon, you were talking about how it has to be kind of co-created and representative, and really any member of the kind of audience here tonight can get involved in these task force and be a voice in that room, or be a voice in that group about why this matters and why this is relevant. But I think that's a key consideration, that it's training and skills development and kind of just awareness of our own kind of.
If I can add just something quickly, it's more about the way what we value in heritage, as Manon was saying, is the interpretation of it. Because I think a way that we can make heritage more inclusive is by accepting different interpretations of it, and encouraging people to make their own interpretations, so that there is not this sort of cultural or emotional even gap between people who are not heritage experts and heritage itself. So in a way, it's sort of democratization of the interpretation of heritage, perhaps. I don't know how to actually do this, but you know, I think this could be important.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it is very important that to raise awareness that everybody has their own interpretation of heritage, and heritage in my view is always an expression of culture, which is always very dynamic. It changes constantly. What we now think of maybe heritage can change within 10, 20, 50 years. And I think it's very important just to keep the floor open, for everybody to give their own interpretations to heritage. And heritage is not just only the big buildings and the Renaissance, and which is also very nice, but it's I think what Manon said also is it's also the food that you eat with your family that has been prepared in a certain way. It can be very little, but I think it's important to raise awareness that heritage is something very fluid, and that everybody can have a say in it as well. And therefore, I also think it's important just to work in whatever project it is, kind of work bottom up and invite people just to shoot at an idea and let's see what comes out of it. Every time it can be something new. So, but it's a difficult. Yeah, it really made me think. It's a difficult question to answer, but I think there are many answers to this question. But very interesting to think about this further.
I think we have one more question and then we can conclude the session.
Well, thank you very much, guys. My question is directed to Volta from the future is heritage, and again the other one is related to everything which concerns heritage. So the first question is, the future is heritage as an organization. What are the aspects apart from heritage advocacy does it work with to ensure that heritage is well preserved? Is it only heritage advocacy, or it includes aspects of using entrepreneurship as a way of trying to make sure that heritage is well preserved? And a general question to all the panelists: what are the main issues do you think are likely going to ensure that the preservation and the prioritization of heritage products continues as time progresses? Because with the way the world is going, it's more pro-profits rather than anything else. So if heritage is not producing profits, if heritage is not again solving the problems like the climate change, issues of climate change, it means that with time it will be regarded as something which is not of value. So what are the ammunitions do we have as the youth to ensure that indeed the future becomes heritage, or heritage becomes the future? Thank you very much.
Yes, just to react, very good questions indeed. To answer your first question, we are a network, so we are not an organization. We are a name that is supported by two heritage institutions in the Netherlands, but we get total freedom on the field of the content, the way we program. So they support us, but what we do is that we create a platform where people can go to learn, to meet new people, but also to share their work or see collaboration. It's actually it's sort of a think tank on location, but not just on thinking, also in the practical way. So it's really to give just young people a platform, a finance platform as well, to do whatever they need. So if they need some more information or want to learn more about the heritage field, they can go and experience that. But if they just want to meet people or just want to get inspired, that is also possible. So we have multiple aims with our network. Your second question, that is also a very good one. I don't know if I would have an instant answer on that as well. But I think what is important, and especially looking to big organizations or governments as well, is that there's more as well than economic value. That there are very different ways you can interpret that value. But I have to say I don't have a instant answer. I really have to think about this a moment. I'm very curious what the rest of the panelists think, but I'm still trying to find a possible answer, maybe.
I think to have a little go at that second question, it is an important question. I think actually the concept of economic value prescribed to historic sites is not recent, and I think in terms of conserving heritage in a way which makes it profitable, I mean, is not necessarily quite as new a concept as perhaps the question proposed. But I do understand exactly what you mean in terms of moving forward. This is potentially kind of more, capitalist, for want of a much better word, or of a detrimental effect on buildings or historic sites. These things are already happening. In terms of relating that to things like global warming or sustainability and how they might directly impact that, I think it was touched on a bit before. I think conservation is moving in, or the protection of heritage is aware of at least of those potential shortcomings further down the line. And I think projects are away from, again, the kind of very old-fashioned concept of conservation being a very kind of only a technical, closed-off speciality limited to only a certain number of scientists or conservators. And I think wider concepts of conservation in terms of not only community-driven input, and how people are actually having more of an opinion on what they want doing to their sites, but also issues such as longevity and sustainability. They hopefully shouldn't have too much of a detrimental effect on sites. But back to the original point is that there is always going to be an inherent bias towards certain sites, and funding is always going to be very unfairly distributed. You can pick any country in the world and there'll be certain sites or projects or concepts that will always be nicely funded, and there will be ones that won't. And I guess ultimately it's just going to come down to who are the stakeholders, and are any of those non-governmental or organizational stakeholders going to be in a position to do anything about it. And I guess volunteer groups and community-driven action is perhaps going to become more of a prevalent thing moving down the line. But yeah, a really, really good question and a really important one.
I have some ideas. I have two main points. One is for the physical one, which is that anything that already exists has a huge advantage, which is that it already exists. There is this saying that, like the most sustainable building is the one that is already there because it takes the least resources. So in this sense, I don't think heritage, maybe we will have to see how we can adapt it, but we have a super strong case for preservation in this sense as a baseline. And the second one is that it's true that economic value is really valued, but there are other things that are important, like social cohesion and sort of senses of identity, which is something that, for example, in capitalist societies like in Europe, we are seeing as more of a problem, and even in the States. So I think that I wouldn't be surprised if governments and policymakers are not going to continue to invest in this kind of initiatives, especially to avoid having, a fragmented society and more tension.
I'm happy to come in there just on maybe on the second part again on your question, Tatenda, and this idea about for profit and that kind of thing. And yeah, I think everyone's hit the nail on the head. Like even Europeana, the precursor was the European Digital Library, and that was really set up in response to the Google initiative where they wanted to digitize all the books and all the heritage of the world. And so a lot of people came together and thought about that and thought about, well, is there blind spots with this where a certain museum and a certain, collection isn't getting the clicks that Google wants? And suddenly perhaps it'll be removed or kind of delisted. And this is, the problematic areas that we want to kind of consider. And I totally agree with Carlotta that, even with what we've discussed in terms of job precarity and even like structural youth unemployment, it's related. It's intrinsically linked with kind of neoliberalism and for-profit kind of thinking around digital cultural heritage. And that's something that has to be constantly challenged and corrected and given context. So I think this is kind of work that will continue. And really, when we even talk about, let's say, the climate crisis and how that's such a massive issue, and it can't just be a side issue. It has to be like a fundamental issue, but it's wrapped up in the same thing. It's and even to frame it as a climate crisis, no, it's so much more. It's about corporations polluting the planet and what we're doing. What are we doing about it, and why is it suddenly it's something for younger people to really kind of rally about? And they are, but they're have so much contempt for the complacency that's going on. And so again, this is associated with the kind of for-profit issues. So I hope that just touches on it without kind of waffling too much about it. But it's such a massive, complex issue that we need to kind of work together about.
I think now we can conclude our question and answer session for today. But we will be continuing this conversation, this thought-provoking discussion on our social media handles. So please be involved and try to engage and participate in all our activities. And yeah, I would again like to thank all our panelists for making this event possible and for sharing their experiences with all of us. I hope you enjoyed the event, and we look forward to seeing you again in our next talk.